From 12 News, this is Newsmakers.
Meanwhile, Mr. Churchill is in Washington.
After winning World War II, Western leaders forged an alliance system they saw as key to global security, NATO first and foremost. President Trump has a very different view of geopolitics.
After the war, we gave Greenland back.
And now his quest to acquire Greenland is causing a major rift with America's European allies. What does it all mean for the future of U.S. foreign policy? This week on Newsmakers, we'll put that question to the top House Democrat on European affairs, Massachusetts Congressman Bill Keating. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Ted Nesi. Tim White is off this week. Bill Keating is now the longest serving of the four Democrats who represent Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts in the U.S. House. He's also the senior member of the House's Subcommittee on Europe, giving him a front row seat to the recent controversy over the president and Greenland. I spoke with Keating from Washington on Thursday afternoon. Congressman, thank you for joining us from Washington, and I want to dive right in with all the news we've had recently. So we're taping this, just so viewers know, on Thursday afternoon. Things could change by the time most people watch this on Sunday morning, but it appears President Trump is at least somewhat de-escalating this crisis over Greenland. There's this draft framework. He seemed to rule out an invasion when he was in Davos. I understand you and Rhode Island Congressman Gabe Amo earlier today had a meeting with the EU ambassador. Where do you think this situation stands at this hour?
Well, it's certainly de-escalated. There was a great concern about President Trump's desire, ultimatum, some would say, on taking control of Greenland. And when he went to Europe, the red line was really there, and it was great solidarity among the members of NATO and the European Union that this kind of aggressive act against the NATO territory isn't acceptable. I think that the president saw that kind of hard stance. I think he also saw the stock market, which had a radical decline, directly related to his vision of taking control and splitting up NATO, and the economic effect, let alone the security effect of that occurring. So we've seen the stock market bounce back that day after his announcement. I think that there was an agreement since 1951 that gave U.S. unparalleled kind of authority to site, to deal with air, anchorage, site bases. There's a great ability for the U.S. to move ahead with the cooperation of Greenland, with an existing statutory agreement. So this was in place, and I think what you're seeing is the president come back, work around that agreement, and the Secretary General of NATO interceded while he was there in Europe with a framework, some suggestions. The president seemed to accept that framework, but it's just the framework. My feeling, however, is that there was enough latitude before. He'll be able to do whatever he wants before. The irony of the whole thing was, by saying he wanted to take control of Greenland for security reasons, concerned about Russia and China, the result was to fracture NATO, which the greatest advantage we have that China or Russia does not have is this coalition, particularly the heart of that coalition, NATO. So I think cooler heads prevailed with the president. He understood he had the framework in place to meet any of the security needs he might want. And I do hope that legislation that I put in that actually made it through as part of the National Defense Authorization that was signed into law by President Trump is a framework for moving ahead. It provided special, emissaries, special appointments by 3 of the European Arctic countries and North America to come together and to have security, diplomatic, economic cooperation in place on a full-time basis with those people focused directly on that. And I think within that framework, that can be very helpful.
And Congressman, I do want to talk about, in a second, the longer-term effects on NATO of this episode and things happening more broadly. But just sticking more narrowly for now with the Greenland question, you had an emergency meeting on January 7th. Your office put out photos with the Danish ambassador, with Greenland's representative. That was when this was all starting to really heat up. I'm just curious, on a human level, kind of how did they feel about what was happening? Were they surprised? How would you describe how they sounded in that meeting?
They were disappointed. If you look at the relationship we had with Denmark, people would realize this, that the only time that Article 5, and I'll explain what that is in a moment, of the NATO treaty, the only time it was ever implemented was after 9/11. That article provides that an attack on any nation member's soil would be attack as it would be on a nation's sovereign soil. So when we were attacked in 9/11 and we embarked on Iraq and particularly Afghanistan, you saw all our NATO member allies come together. When I was visiting the troops, they were there. And incidentally, the greatest pro rata casualty rate of any country in Afghanistan was Denmark. And it was not popular in those countries to be fighting, these battles and these wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, but they were there. So I think that there was great disappointment by the Danish people.
So, as you already referenced, there have been several bills introduced in light of this situation already in Congress. Congressman Amo has the No NATO for Purchase Act, which you're a co-sponsor of. That would stop the president from spending taxpayer money to acquire a NATO territory. You put in the No Funds for NATO Invasion Act, which would prohibit the use of federal funds for an invasion of NATO territory. You did have one Republican co-sponsor at last check that I had. Maybe more have come on, but two now. Okay, thank you. But Congressman, look, there's no chance House GOP leadership takes up bills like this, right? Is this primarily symbolic for you to put these in right now?
Well, Representative Amo and myself on Foreign Affairs Committee, certainly Senator Reid, in terms of armed services and my own activity in armed services and Seth Magaziner, all of us in our region were really active in moving forward to show to the rest of the world, to our NATO allies, that this wasn't the sense of Congress. And we had 70 co-sponsors of that legislation just almost overnight. So there was great support there. As you mentioned, it's very difficult for crossing party lines with Donald Trump these days, but two Republicans stood up as well as sponsors, but many of them, my prediction was if it ever did go to the floor, there would have been close to 400 of the 435 members supporting it. But you're correct, Ted. I don't think the Speaker of the House would have ever put that on the floor without the approval of Donald Trump. That's the way he operates. But the fact that we all worked together on different pieces of legislation made a difference. And it made a difference with our NATO allies. They knew and supported what we were doing. I met with them before. None of them wanted to be targeted as a country, but the concept that I had of making it NATO-centered was something they embraced. So they were watching that. They were really, I think, somewhat relieved, hopefully reassured that there were so many people that respected the NATO treaty.
You've been in Congress now for 15 years, Congressman Keating. Foreign policy in the past has generally been a place where there was more, even in this era, bipartisanship, more effort to be bipartisan. And there were historically a lot of Republicans who were very supportive of the transatlantic alliance, who cared a lot about NATO. It was not certainly seen as a partisan issue. Do you feel when you talk to your colleagues that view is dwindling, or is it more because of President Trump's stance with NATO and with Europe, they're just being quieter, but you think deep down the sentiment of the House is similar?
Well, I think if it reached the floor, that legislation, that would have had enormous support. Particularly the people I work with the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Armed Services Committee, those people are very supportive of that transatlantic relationship. They understand the value to our country. This isn't a feel-good issue that we have these allies and we're having this moment where we have to all go together. This is a bill. This is an issue that is self-interested. The U.S. has enormous security based on that relationship. So it really NATO ushered in almost 80 years of the greatest peace and prosperity that the world has ever seen. That's not an exaggeration. That's really, historians cite that as a fact. So there's great support for it among the members. The difficulty is they don't want to do anything to cross Donald Trump. He frankly scapegoats them when that happens. He threatens them. He threatens them politically. There's even an overflow, sadly, that many of those members have threats at their home. So it's not a great climate that way, but I must tell you, in the discussions I had as this issue surfaced, and in my confidence that that would be the vote should it hit the floor, it's a solid understanding this is in the U.S. self-interest.
We have to take a break. Coming up, Congressman Keating discusses ICE and whether he'll run for re-election this fall. Stick with us on Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. Now, more of my interview with Congressman Bill Keating, who represents New Bedford and is a senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. We spoke Thursday afternoon.
You referenced World War II, and I've been thinking about that, too, in the context of all this happening. And, you know, the president's allies point out, it is interesting when you look back, that President Truman's administration did contemplate trying to buy Greenland. So it's not like this is a brand new idea, the importance of this to America. You hear even some experts who aren't aligned with Trump expressing concern about its importance to missile defense, China's encroachment there, the rare earths they have in Greenland. Putting aside President Trump's approach, which is itself divisive, do you think anything needs to change with how America works with Greenland, how our situation up there?
No, I mean, you pointed out the longstanding concern that people had, or the advantage they saw with Greenland being so closely allied and available to us for our security needs. In 1951, that was resolved, and the agreement took place, a binding agreement. And all those security needs that we're talking about were there. In terms of the mineral rights, the reality is there's so much ice there, it's so deep, there's no U.S. companies that have expressed an interest, as President Trump raised this issue, to mine there. But if they wanted to, that would be welcome by Greenlanders, and they made that clear. So honestly, those issues aren't real issues. And we're left, and that's the one thing that amazed people about this issue. They just said, where is the issue? What is the problem? And I think not only a lot of people, in Europe asked that question. I can tell you, people that I represent, people in Massachusetts, and I'm sure people in Rhode Island, as well as people across the country, they were mystified as to why this was necessary. And indeed, I think the framework, which is frankly not necessary, but if it's a great approach forward, we welcome it, will be built around nothing that really goes beyond that 1951 agreement to any extent.
You know, but if we, stepping back just from Greenland, President Trump does seem to just fundamentally disagree with the Western alliance approach, frankly, the sort of the global order put in place after World War II by Roosevelt and then Truman and Churchill and other Western leaders in North America and in Europe. And do you think we are entering a new era, whether you like it or not? Do you think, based on the president feeling this way and having very strong support among Republicans in Congress, at least to the public, do you think we're entering a new era no matter what?
I don't think we're necessarily entering a new era. But I must say this, there's more skepticism by some of our closest allies with the U.S. There's not the same feeling of trust with the U.S. And there's a lot of comments from the White House and the administration that frankly undercut our closest alliance. But they're also undercutting our own security and our own economic benefits. Using tariffs as weapons, which he has been using, is so disruptive. It's disruptive of the stock market, as we saw this week. It's disruptive in terms of investment, and people are paying back home. Anyone that does grocery shopping, and I grocery shop every week, everyone notices the difference. The president could say, this isn't happening. All you have to do is look at your grocery slip, and it'll tell you that. And people realize that. There's businesses out in my district that I've gone through that depend and manufacturing businesses that depend on component parts from other countries in order to have manufacturing and jobs occur here and compete with other countries. That's affecting businesses. Some businesses privately have said they don't know if they can go forward under the current tariff conditions. So they're all waiting for the Supreme Court to make their decision. The president has said he'll find other avenues, but undercutting all these other issues is his use of these tariffs, which he seems to use as a political weapon to target people instead of just an economic benefit or tool for the United States and consumers and taxpayers in the United States.
Congressman, we only have a few minutes left, so I want to get through a few topics quick. Immigration. Democrats seem to be divided as we approach another government funding deadline on whether to support money for ICE in the upcoming government funding bill. Some saying they won't vote for a funding bill with money for ICE in it. Others saying there's no real choice because that would cause a shutdown. Where do you come down on that debate?
Well, what's occurred in going forward with the bill on the floor is they've separated out the Homeland Security and the ICE funding from the other parts of the budget that we're going to be voting on. So we haven't voted yet, but I anticipate that there'll be enough votes to go forward with those other parts. I would say on the Homeland Security side, there will be a split that goes along partisan lines where a lot of Democrats, most Democrats will vote against it, but they seem to have, and this is dangerous before the vote occurs, they seem to have enough votes to go ahead with that budget themselves. But a lot of us, myself included, were very concerned. The so-called Big Beautiful Bill had $10 billion. It was an astronomical amount. It's funded the greatest, most expensive and largest police force in our country. To see the sights of what's happening in Minneapolis, to see, again, our constitutional rights, our due process rights being violated, to see the images of young 5-year-olds being taken away in these efforts, clearly not aimed at criminals and people with a criminal background. To see that erupt in a city, and unnecessarily so, is a concern. And I think in the absence of being able to do anything else, the only way that we could have some control, because we're not in control of the agenda, being in the minority right now, that was our only vote that we had on this.
Now, an election year, simple question. Are you definitely running for re-election this fall?
Yeah, I'm running as we speak right now, and I'm interested. When you said I go back a few years, on a personal note with you, I remember we were doing one of these interviews when your daughter was born.
This is
now
true.
I hear beginning school.
That's right. She's 3.5 now, so you can track your own congressional career through that.
So we're looking at a lot of young children like that, Ted.
Yeah. When you get enough
what we
years
look
down
at
there.
when we look at the issues we want to really be dealing with at home is what kind of ability will they have to have a healthy life, to have education, and to have the opportunity going forward. And so, we're thinking of your daughter in that process.
Thank you for that, Congressman. And I do want to end on something closer to home. You were, I believe, there last week when the Zeiterion Theater reopened in New Bedford. I saw the pictures there. Mayor Mitchell posted a bunch of. How was that event?
That was extraordinary. To see that something that was slated to be a parking lot years ago, and the debate then was it had its greatest value as a parking lot, to see it transformed into a cultural center is just an example of working together. But it was also the persistence of so many people in New Bedford that saw this through. And the price tag of that started out at $18 million and went to $37 million as it progressed. And to see them meet that goal, and some of that was federal money as well. But that's a real economic stimulator. It's an investment that will produce an annual benefit in terms of the economy of $12 million a year, and during the construction produced $43 million in economic benefit for that $37 million investment. So it's not only great for the culture and the arts surrounding the area, it's a great economic boom for the area as well.
And you've got your Patriots pin on. Most people watching the morning of the game. Any predictions?
I remember Stidham as a quarterback, and he's someone that did well with New England, actually. So my take is, if New England gets ahead and gets the early lead, and then they can blitz a lot more the way they've been doing it, shake him up a little bit, that'll be good for New England. So if I had to bet, I would say the Patriots, but I think it could be a more difficult race than the odds makers are giving it right now.
That's as close to an honest answer on the Patriots' chances as I would expect from an elected official. So well done, Congressman. Thank you for joining us. Good luck getting home before the snow.
All right, Ted. Thank you again.
Still waiting for the politician who comes on here and picks the Patriots as the losers, but we haven't seen that yet on Newsmakers. We have to take another break. When we come back, the latest on the emerging Republican primary for Rhode Island governor. Stick with us. Welcome back to Newsmakers. This year's Democratic primary for Rhode Island governor is getting plenty of attention, but the Republican primary for governor is also starting to come into focus. Back in December, Aaron Gukian, a former Kucheri administration official, kicked off his campaign, promising to tackle the state's high cost of living. This week, he also gave an interview to the Boston Globe where he discussed his struggles with addiction and how that would affect him as governor. Also this week, a prominent Republican ruled herself out of the race for governor, Senate Minority Leader Jessica de la Cruz, who had been discussed as a potential candidate. She made the announcement during a live interview on 12 News at 4.
Have you made that decision?
Well, I will tell you, I was listening to your interview with the speaker, and he said he was going to tell your husband if he decided to run.
Oh boy, yes.
So I'm going to tell you if I ever decide to run, okay? But I'm going to be running for state senate. I always keep the door open on the possibilities. I never say never, but I'll be running for state senate and hopefully working on getting some more Republicans elected.
Going to remember that, leader. All right. And then on Thursday, another Republican officially kicked off a campaign for governor. This one, a political newcomer, Robert Raimondo, who just moved back to Rhode Island from California. There are conflicting accounts about whether he is any relation to the former Rhode Island governor with the same last name, Gina Raimondo. He says, yes, a distant relative. Her family says they don't know that that is true. And then the third Republican, former comedian Elaine Pellino, has also filed to run for the Republican nomination. That's all the time we have on this week's Newsmakers, but tune in because this weekend on Behind the Story, Eli Sherman's weekly look at local reporters and other media figures, we have Mark Dondero, our own former sports reporter who's now at 98.5 The Sports Hub. They're breaking down the Patriots and talking about the broader sports landscape in New England, so that'll be perfect Sunday morning viewing when you're done with Newsmakers to get ready for the big game. That's all the time we have today. Tim White will be back next week, and we'll see you then on Newsmakers.